we go. Exhaust is welded. All I have to do is the finish polish and then a set of springs for the muffler, which I have. I just have to weld on. Leave the position. Oh man. You guys, I'm sure, know exactly how tempting it is to throw a splash of gas in this thing and light it off. It is right there. Look at it. Alright, so you spend a whole lot of time making something. It's one of those moments you get to be proud of your accomplishments. So anyway, you have been warned. Sunglasses. It's a safety thing. Just look at it. So shiny. A lot of work in this exhaust. Now I know there's no final welding footage in here, but that's because TIG welding for me is still very difficult. I am by no means like hashtag weld porn type welder, but the welds I did on that exhaust are structurally good. It was back purged. I know they're quality welds, but because they're so hard for me to do, I didn't want the camera to be a distraction, so it just seems like every time I have it rolling when I'm welding, everything goes wrong. And in this instance, it was just like I only had so much gas to work with, and I just needed to get it done, so I didn't turn the camera on or anything like that. But you can go watch a million different, super awesome TIG welding videos. I know that's not why you guys are on this channel. So anyway, the exhaust is over there on the ground. I'm gonna pull the bike back in, get the exhaust on it, and that's the last step. Add some fuel, we'll light it off. So I'm pretty excited. Okay, so here we are. I've got obviously my auxiliary fuel tank hanging up here. I obviously have some fuel lines hooked to it. This is a point where you need to take your time when your entire mind is like go, 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 because you just want to hear this thing run. I'm in the same boat. So I was just about to try to start this thing up and realized, oh, I didn't put coolant in this thing yet. So definitely take your time. Go and do what's called a nut and bolt of the bike. So on the critical fasteners, basically any fastener. So double check, triple check that everything is tight and how it should be. You don't want anything rattling loose that you could have easily prevented. So check all your drain plugs and things like that. So I do have a couple rags. Like I have a rag underneath the coolant outlet tube because those are notorious for leaking. And even though I have new seals in there, if it's going to seep for a second, you know, until it seals or something like that, I want to go ahead and just protect that paint. So I do have some extra precautions. I'm going to go ahead and, even though they're brand new carbs, I'm still going to put some rags underneath the carbs or underneath the overflow tubes just to make sure they don't leak on the paint. So doing some extra precautions. Now, before I go ahead and put some gas in that thing and hit the key, I have already confirmed spark, of course, because we did the ignition system. I know it rolls over fine. I have adjusted the valves, and before I put the valve covers on, I did confirm that it has oil pressure using the dummy light that's powered through the PDM here, as well as just visually seeing it come up top. So I know it has oil up into the valve train, and I know it has pressure there, and that's what we want. So, yeah. Big moment. It's always one of the most fun moments, but we have our exhaust done, and then we have the throttle, and man, it's ready to go. So before anybody asks about carburetor jets and stuff like that, this is not tuned, so that's an irrelevant question until it's tuned and ready to go. There's no way of knowing what this thing's going to require without having it running. So whenever I go to fire this thing up, RPMs could go skyrocket to the roof. I could have to throttle it a bunch. Who knows? It's not gonna be dialed in. It's probably gonna run really poor, and then from there I'll start tinkering with it and dialing it in. So as of now, I'm gonna go ahead, pull this thing down, throw some fuel in it, and hopefully we'll light off. So this thing, I don't know how many of you guys have been following since the beginning, but I've been working on this bike on and off for like over a couple years, and it is finally the time. Give it a little splash. I have most of the coolant in it, but once we run it, it'll draw that down, of course. We'll top it off, we'll keep an eye on it. So, here we go. Take that. Whew. A little smoky in here. Get this fan going. Another go. Tiny drip on my coolant fitting or my temp sensor fitting. We'll address that. Oh, so excited. Well, I'm not sure how much of that you could really hear with the friggin' cannon right here aimed straight at the mic. I'm sure it sounded incredible. But anyway, thing lit off really well. Got some heat in the pipes, heat cycled the engine, I guess, probably a full time. It probably didn't get up to full running temp. But all sounded really good. I know like the carbs, they're not even balanced or anything like that. I'm actually going to adjust the throttles right now because I know I had one of these hats off and I screwed up this adjustment. So whatever I was doing, it just, I mean, the carbs were not even synced to each other, so none of that. So there's a long way to go. But man, the thing idled for a while. I had to play with the throttle a little bit sometimes, but this one's gone easy so far. I just pulled the left plug out and it is black, so it was sucking down a lot of fuel, way too much fuel for the time that it ran. I actually filled this thing up to like, it sucked quite a bit of fuel down actually. So that's something we have to address. But again, we're going to make all those changes anyway, and that's what it's all about. We got to dial it in. As far as issues, I did have a teeny tiny little leak from the coolant temp sensor itself. If you remember, I drilled in, I modified the original coolant temp sensor. I chopped it up and then used that as an adapter for the new one. Well, I didn't have it in there as tight as I thought, so no biggie. Yeah. Feeling pretty good about it so far. So I'm gonna tinker with the carbs a little bit, and we'll have some fun with it tomorrow for sure. One thing I didn't mention, so those of you, if you've been watching these videos, you probably saw, I went through this entire engine and then finished it off with some high temp paint. Now you have to actually bake that stuff on, so the fact that it's heat cycled right now, the engine's warm and it's currently baking off the paint, or baking on the paint I should say. Now in the meantime, until I got to this point, just working in the shop, things collect dust even when you have them covered and stuff. So the engine actually had some dust on it, and I wanted to make sure that I got that dust off of the engine and had the engine as clean as possible before I started running it, because once you run it, it's almost like that paint gets soft for a second and then it'll just cling to anything that's on top of it. So you can actually bake that crap into the paint on the engine, and then nobody wants that. So I tried to make sure the engine was perfectly clean, or as clean as possible, before I ran it. Just as an added precaution, just one more step to make sure it's just going to continue to look beautiful. So, and you'll have to heat cycle it a couple times for the paint to really kind of bake on there. And for those of you who have never done this, whatever you paint, whenever you first start it, you're going to notice some smoke for sure. That's okay. That's the paint just baking, and it creates its own scent. It's kind of funky smelling, but that's totally normal. So as of now, like I said, I'm going to just play around with this thing, and now starts the process of getting it dialed in, and just that last detail push. So foot pegs, emblems, PCV system, radiator overflow, just odds and ends. So we're getting there. This is a huge step forward. I'm super pumped.